After 10 years of cutting me from the family, they showed up at my new house, uninvited, like nothing happened. My son cut me from the family without explanation and erased me completely for 10 years. Not a word, not even when his father died. Then my small craft and landscaping business took off, and I sold it for $2.8 million. I bought a beautiful home on the lake in northern Wisconsin to finally enjoy the peace I'd earned. But the morning after I moved in, before I'd even unpacked the last box, the doorbell rang. Aggressive, impatient. I opened the door to find my son, his wife, and my teenage granddaughter standing there with suitcases piled behind them. His wife walked past me into my home without asking and said, "This place is big enough for all of us." They thought I was just a lonely old woman desperate for family. They had no idea what I was about to do. What happened next changed everything. If you've ever been treated like you don't matter by the people who should love you most, this story is for you. My name is Ayanna Whitehorse. I'm 68 years old. I was standing at the window of my new home, watching the morning light move across the water. The dock creaked softly in the wind. Everything was quiet. Everything was mine. After decades of breaking my back in the sun, after raising a son alone, after 10 years of silence that nearly broke me, I'd finally made it here. Peace. Solitude, a home that nobody could take from me. Then the doorbell rang. Not a polite ring, a hard, insistent one, the kind that says, "I'm not leaving." I set down my coffee and walked through the half-unpacked living room, my bare feet cold on the hardwood. I pulled open the front door, and my heart stopped. Standing on my porch was my son. Marcus looked older than his 45 years. His shoulders were slumped, his eyes tired and evasive, like he couldn't quite bring himself to look at me. Next to him stood his wife, Nicole, the woman who'd perfected the art of freezing people out with a smile. She looked polished, controlled, wearing clothes that cost more than my first truck. And behind them both, half hidden behind a mountain of luggage, was a girl I barely recognized. My granddaughter, Kaya. I hadn't seen her since she was 7. She was 17 now. Thin, too thin. Her face was pale, her hoodie pulled tight around her, and when our eyes met for a split second, I saw something that made my chest tighten. Fear. I stood there gripping the door, waiting for my son to explain, waiting for him to say, "Mom, I'm sorry we disappeared. I'm sorry I didn't come to Dad's funeral. I'm sorry we threw you away like you were nothing." But that's not what happened. Nicole didn't say hello. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't even pretend to care. She looked past me, scanning the open layout of my house, the view of the lake, the high ceilings, and I saw something flash in her eyes. Hunger. "Well," she said, stepping forward and brushing past me like I was the housekeeper, "I have to say I'm impressed. This place is huge." She turned and smiled, cold and sharp. "It's definitely big enough for all of us." I froze. The audacity paralyzed me. They hadn't spoken to me in 10 years. Not when I begged Marcus to tell me what I'd done wrong. Not when his father died and I sat alone at the funeral. Not on a single holiday, birthday, or sleepless night when I wondered if my son even remembered my name. And now she was walking into my home like she had a key. I stepped in front of her, blocking the hallway to the living room. "Stop," I said. My voice came out low and steady, though my pulse was hammering. "You don't just walk into my house. Get your bags, get off my property." Nicole stopped. She tilted her head and smiled, adjusting the strap of her designer purse. Her voice dripped with false sweetness. "Oh, Ayana, don't be dramatic. We're family, and family helps each other, right?" She paused, her smile tightening. "Besides, you wouldn't turn us away, not when your granddaughter is sick." She stepped aside, and I finally got a clear look at Kaya. The girl I remembered had been bright-eyed, full of questions, always laughing. This girl looked hollow. Her skin was pale. Her hands were shaking. She was drowning in an oversized hoodie, even though it wasn't that cold. And when she looked up at me, I didn't see relief. I saw terror. I didn't always know what I'd done wrong. For the first year, I thought it was temporary, a misunderstanding. Maybe Marcus was busy with work, with Kaya, with life. I told myself he'd call eventually, that he'd show up for Thanksgiving or Christmas, or at least send a card. But he didn't. The distance started small. Missed calls that went to voicemail, text messages that stayed on read for days, then weeks. When I did reach him, the conversations were short, strained. He'd mention being busy. Nicole would be in the background, her voice sharp and impatient, calling him away. And slowly, steadily, he stopped answering altogether. I didn't understand it. I replayed every conversation, every visit, every moment I'd spent with him. Had I said something wrong? Offered advice when I shouldn't have? Been too present or not present enough? Then one day I ran into Marcus's coworker at the grocery store. She looked uncomfortable when she saw me, like she knew something I didn't. After some awkward small talk, she said it quietly, almost apologetically. "I heard Nicole's been telling people you're difficult, that you're too involved, too dramatic. Toxic. That was the word she didn't say, but I heard it anyway." I went home and cried for the first time in years, not because the words hurt, though they did, but because I knew that's what Marcus believed now. That's what Nicole had convinced him of, and there was nothing I could do to prove otherwise without looking exactly like the person she said I was. So I stopped trying. When my husband, James, got sick 2 years later, I called Marcus. I left voicemails, I sent emails. I told him his father was dying and that he needed to come home. He didn't. James passed on a Tuesday morning in October. I held his hand in the hospital room alone. The funeral was small, a handful of friends, some old co-workers, a few distant cousins. I sat in the front row of the church and stared at the empty seat beside me, the one that should have been Marcus's. He didn't come, he didn't call, he didn't send flowers. I stopped expecting anything after that. Holidays became something I endured rather than celebrated. I'd set the table for one, I'd cook smaller portions, I'd watch the sunset over the same empty rooms and remind myself that loneliness wasn't the same as being alone, that I'd raised a son, buried a husband, and survived worse than silence. But some nights I'd lie awake and wonder if I'd imagined the love I thought we had, if I'd been blind to something I'd done, some fundamental flaw that made me unworthy of my own child's time. I never let myself stay in that place for long. After James died, I made a choice. I could spend the rest of my life begging for crumbs of affection from people who didn't want me, or I could build something for myself, something no one could take away. So I worked. I'd always been good with my hands. My mother taught me beadwork when I was young, and over the years I'd learned leatherwork, wood carving, and quilting. After James passed, I started selling my pieces at craft fairs and farmers markets, small things at first. Keychains, wall hangings, dream catchers with traditional patterns my grandmother used to make. People noticed the work. They asked questions. They wanted custom pieces. Then someone asked if I could design their garden. I didn't know much about landscaping, but I knew plants. I knew how to make things grow. I started small, native grasses, wildflower beds, stone pathways that followed the natural curve of the land. I incorporated traditional elements, medicine wheels, prayer gardens, spaces that felt sacred without needing to explain why. Word spread. Within 2 years, I had more clients than I could handle. I hired a small crew. We worked long days in the sun, our hands cracked and dirty, our backs aching, but I loved it. Every project was a prayer. Every garden was proof that I could still create something beautiful even when everything else had been taken from me. 5 years in, a developer approached me. They wanted me to design the landscaping for an entire residential community, dozens of homes, parks, walking trails. It was the biggest contract I'd ever seen. I said yes. The project took 2 years. By the time it was finished, my business had tripled in size. I had employees, equipment, a reputation that reached beyond the state. And then out of nowhere, I got a call from a regional competitor. They wanted to buy me out. The offer was $2.8 million. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't celebrate. I didn't buy anything flashy or expensive. I just signed the papers, paid off the house, set aside money for taxes, and started looking for a place where I could finally rest. I found the lake house 3 months later. It was quiet, private, surrounded by water and trees and sky. It was everything I'd worked for and nothing I needed to share. I wasn't lonely. I was free. And then they showed up. Now, as I stood in my living room watching Nicole rifle through my kitchen cabinets like she was taking inventory, I realized something chilling. They hadn't come to reconcile. They hadn't come to apologize. They'd come because they thought they owed them something. Marcus set down a suitcase in the hallway without asking. Kaya hovered near the door, eyes down, arms wrapped around herself. Nicole was already talking about which rooms they'd take, how long they'd stay, what I could do to make this work for everyone. I said nothing. I just watched. And then I heard it. The soft, deliberate click of the guest room doors locking from the inside. They were making themselves at home. Want to know what Ayana does next? Keep reading to find out how far they're willing to go and how far she'll let them fall. By the time the sun set that first evening, they'd made themselves completely at home. Marcus moved through my house like he'd lived there for years. He opened cabinets without asking, helped himself to water from the fridge, draped his jacket over the back of my favorite chair. But he never quite looked at me. Every time I entered a room, his eyes would slide away, finding something else to focus on. The view, his phone, the ceiling. It was Nicole who ran the show. She moved through the space with the confidence of someone conducting an inspection. She opened closets, peered into the garage, ran her hand along the countertops like she was checking for dust. She made little comments under her breath, observations that sounded like compliments but felt like criticisms. "This layout is so quaint," she said, standing in the middle of the living room with her hands on her hips. "You could really open this up, knock out that wall, extend the kitchen island, make it feel more modern." I didn't respond. I just watched her, my arms folded. She turned to Marcus. "Don't you think, honey, we could make this place so much more functional?" We. She'd been in my house for less than 4 hours, and she was already talking about renovations, about what we could do, like the deed had both their names on it. Kaya sat on the edge of the couch, silent. She hadn't said a word since they'd arrived. She just watched everything with wide, wary eyes, her hands gripping the hem of her hoodie. I wanted to talk to her, to ask if she was okay, but every time I got close, Nicole would insert herself between us, steering the conversation somewhere else. "Ayana," Nicole said, her voice bright and false, "you must be exhausted. At your age, moving into a new place is probably overwhelming. Why don't you sit down and let us handle things?" At your age. She said it like I was fragile, like I needed help crossing the street. I was 68, not ancient. I'd sold a business I'd built from nothing. I'd moved into this house by myself, unpacked half the boxes, and was doing just fine before they showed up. But I didn't argue. I just smiled tightly and said, "I'm fine, thank you." Nicole didn't seem to hear me. She was already opening the pantry, pulling out ingredients, making herself busy. I'll make dinner tonight. You probably haven't had a home-cooked meal in ages. I'd cooked for myself my entire life, but again, I said nothing. Marcus sat at the kitchen table scrolling through his phone. He glanced up once, caught my eye, then looked away quickly. There was something in his expression, guilt maybe, or shame, but not enough to make him speak. "So, Mom," he said finally, his voice awkward and stilted, "this place must have cost a fortune. Where'd the money come from?" There it was, the question I'd been waiting for. I leaned against the counter and studied him, my son, the boy I'd raised, fed, loved, and lost. He couldn't even ask me directly. He had to ease into it like he was testing the waters. "I sold my business," I said simply. Nicole's head snapped up from the stove. "Your business?" She laughed, a sharp little sound. "You mean that craft thing you used to do?" "Landscaping," I corrected, "and yes." She exchanged a glance with Marcus. It was quick, but I saw it, a look that said, "We need to talk about this later." "Well," Nicole said, turning back to the stove, "that's surprising. I didn't realize there was much money in that sort of thing." I didn't answer. Dinner was tense. Nicole served some kind of pasta with too much garlic and not enough salt. Marcus ate in silence. Kaya pushed food around her plate, but didn't take more than a few bites. And then Nicole brought out the tea. "I made this especially for you, Ayanna," she said, setting a steaming mug in front of me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's chamomile. Helps you relax. I know how stressful it must be having us here so suddenly." I looked down at the tea. It was pale yellow, fragrant, innocuous looking, but something about the way she said it, "especially for you," made my skin prickle. I smiled politely. "That's kind of you, but I don't drink tea this late. It keeps me up." Nicole's smile faltered just for a second. "Oh, well, I made it fresh. It'd be a shame to waste it." "I'm sure, but I'll pass." There was a beat of silence. Marcus cleared his throat and took a long drink of water. Nicole set the mug aside, her jaw tight. "Suit yourself," she said lightly. But as she turned away, I saw it again, that look. She glanced at Marcus, her eyes sharp and deliberate. He gave the smallest nod. My stomach turned. After dinner, I excused myself and went to my room. I needed space. I needed to think. But as I walked down the hallway, I heard voices coming from the guest room. Low, controlled, urgent. I stopped just outside the door. "We can't keep doing this," Marcus was saying. "She's not stupid. She's old," Shisback with a loan. "That's all that matters. What if She won't. Trust me. We just need a few more days." I pressed my back against the wall, my heart pounding in my ears. "And the girl?" Marcus asked. There was a pause, then Nicole's voice, cold and flat. "Kaya does what she's told." I heard footsteps. I moved quickly, slipping into my room and closing the door silently behind me. I stood there in the dark, my pulse roaring in my ears. They weren't here to reconnect. They were here for something else. What are they really planning? Find out what Ayanna discovers next and how far they're willing to go. I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of other people in my house. Footsteps in the hallway, the creak of floorboards, the muffled hum of voices that stopped whenever I walked past. Something was wrong. I felt it in my bones, the way you feel a storm coming before the sky turns dark. Around midnight, I heard them again. Voices, low and urgent, coming from the guest room at the end of the hall. I slipped out of bed and moved quietly across the floor in my bare feet. The hallway was dark, except for a sliver of light beneath their door. I pressed myself against the wall and listened. "We have to move faster," Nicole was saying. Her voice was clipped, impatient. "We don't have time to play nice." "I know," Marcus said. He sounded tired, defeated, but she's not going to just hand it over. She doesn't have to hand it over. That's the point. There was a pause. I held my breath. "You talked to your doctor friend?" Nicole asked. "Yeah," Marcus said. "He'll do it, but he needs a reason, something documented." "We'll give him a reason. Confusion, memory loss, erratic behavior. It's not hard to make an old woman look incompetent." My stomach dropped. She's isolated out here. No neighbors, no friends checking in. No one's going to question it when we say she needs help. "Guardianship," Marcus said quietly, almost like he was testing the word. "Exactly. We get guardianship. We control everything. The house, the money, all of it." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. Marcus laughed then. It was a weak, hollow sound, like he didn't believe what he was hearing, but didn't have the strength to argue. "You really think we can pull this off?" "I know we can," Nicole said. Her voice was steady, certain. "We just need her compliant, confused, a little sedated." "You mean drug her?" "I mean calm her," Nicole snapped. "She's anxious, overwhelmed, a little something in her tea, her coffee, whatever, just enough to keep her off balance, make her seem unstable. Then your friend signs off, we file the paperwork, and it's done." "And if she fights it?" "She won't. By the time she realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. We move the money fast, liquidate the accounts, sell the house if we have to." "Jesus, Nicole. Don't Jesus me, Marcus. We're $1 million in debt. We're about to lose everything. This is the only way out." There was silence, long and suffocating. Then Marcus spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "What about Kaya?" Another pause. "Kaya does what she's told," Nicole said, her tone flat and final. "And if she doesn't, there are other options." My blood ran cold. "What does that mean?" Marcus asked. "It means she's leverage," Nicole said. "If your mother gets difficult, we remind her that Kaya's health depends on her cooperation. Medication's expensive. Doctors are expensive. If Ayanna wants her granddaughter taken care of, she'll play along." I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. Marcus said nothing. He didn't argue for Kaya. He didn't defend me. He just went silent. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. "We do this clean," Nicole said. "We get the power of attorney signed within the week. Once we have that, we have everything." Power of attorney. The words echoed in my mind, sharp and final. I moved away from the door quietly as I'd come, my heart slamming against my ribs. I slipped back into my room and closed the door without a sound. I sat on the edge of my bed, my hands shaking, my breath coming fast and shallow. They weren't here to reconnect. They weren't here because they missed me. They were here to rob me, to drug me, to take everything I'd built and convince the world I was too old, too confused, too broken to stop them. And they were using Kaya as bait. For 10 years, I'd mourned the loss of my son. I'd grieved the relationship we'd had, the love I thought we'd shared. I'd wondered what I'd done wrong, what I could have done differently. But now, sitting alone in the dark, I realized something. The son I'd loved didn't exist anymore. Maybe he never had. The maternal instinct that had kept me soft, that had made me hope for reconciliation, that had opened the door when they showed up, died in that moment. What rose in its place was something colder, sharper. I wasn't anyone's victim, and I sure as hell wasn't going to let them take what I'd earned. I lay back down, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. They thought I was weak, isolated, easy to manipulate. They had no idea what I was capable of, but they were about to find out. If you've ever had someone underestimate you, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment and let me know. Have you ever had to protect yourself from your own family? Keep reading to see what Ayanna does next. You won't believe how she turns the tables. The next morning, I became exactly what they wanted me to be. Confused, forgetful, a little slow. I stood in the kitchen staring at the coffee maker like I'd never seen it before. Nicole walked in, already dressed and made up, her heels clicking sharply on the tile. Everything okay, Ayana? She asked, her voice dripping with false concern. I blinked at her, let my face go soft and uncertain. I was just trying to remember how this works. She smiled. It was the smile of someone who'd just been handed exactly what they needed. Here, let me help you, she said, moving in close and taking over. She spoke slowly, loudly, like I was hard of hearing. You just press this button. See? Easy. Oh, I said, nodding. Thank you. I don't know where my head is today. It's okay, she said, patting my shoulder. Moving is stressful, especially at your age. I let the comment sit, didn't argue, just smiled weakly and shuffled to the table. Marcus came in a few minutes later. I looked up at him and asked, "Did you sleep well, sweetheart?" He nodded. "Yeah, Mom, thanks." 10 minutes later, I asked him again, "Did you sleep okay last night?" He paused, coffee cup halfway to his mouth. Yeah, you already asked me that." I frowned, touched my temple like I was trying to remember. "Did I? I'm sorry, I must have forgotten." Nicole's eyes gleamed. Over the next 2 days, I played the role perfectly. I misplaced my reading glasses 3 times and asked Marcus to help me find them. I left the stove on and acted startled when Nicole pointed it out. I asked what day it was more than once. I repeated stories, lost my train of thought mid-sentence, stood in doorways like I'd forgotten where I was going. Every time I slipped, Nicole watched me like a hawk. She'd exchange glances with Marcus, little nods of confirmation. See, it's happening. She's losing it. Marcus grew more confident. He started speaking to me the way you'd speak to a child. Simple sentences, gentle corrections, that patronizing patience that made my skin crawl. But I let him. I smiled. I thanked him. I let him think he was helping. Nicole accelerated her timeline. On the 3rd day, she sat down next to me at the kitchen table with a stack of papers. "Ayana, honey, I want to go over some things with you. Just some paperwork, nothing complicated." I looked at the papers, then back at her. "What kind of paperwork?" "Oh, just some legal documents," she said lightly, waving her hand like it was nothing. "Standard stuff, power of attorney, healthcare directives, just so someone can help you make decisions if you're ever too tired or confused to do it yourself." I stared at the papers. My pulse was steady. My face stayed blank. "I don't know," I said slowly. "That sounds like a big decision." "It's really not," Nicole said, leaning in. "It's just a safety net for your protection." Marcus stood behind her, arms crossed. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I'll think about it," I said. Nicole's smile tightened. "Of course, take your time, but not too much time, okay? We want to make sure you're taken care of." I nodded, docile and obedient. But while I played weak, I was watching, learning, gathering, and I wasn't the only one paying attention. Kaya had been silent since the day they'd arrived, but I started noticing things. She barely ate. At meals, she'd push food around her plate, take a few bites, then excuse herself. Her clothes hung loose on her frame. When she reached for something, I saw the edge of a bruise peeking out from under her sleeve, dark purple, finger-shaped. I caught her looking once. Our eyes met, hers filled with something I recognized instantly. Fear and shame. She looked away quickly, pulling her sleeve down. I tried to get her alone. I'd linger in the hallway when she came out of her room. I'd offer to make her tea, ask if she wanted to sit on the dock with me. But every time, Nicole appeared. Every single time. "Kaya, come help me with this." "Kaya, I need you for a second." "Kaya, don't bother your grandmother. She needs her rest." The girl was being monitored, controlled, and she knew it. Then, one afternoon, I found a note. I was folding laundry in my room when I picked up one of my shirts and something fell out, a small scrap of paper folded tight. I opened it. "Please be careful. Don't drink anything they make for you." My breath caught. I looked toward the door. It was closed. I folded the note and tucked it into my pocket, my heart pounding. Kaya knew. She was trying to warn me. The next day, I found another note slipped under my bathroom door. They're lying about everything. I burned both notes in the fireplace when no one was looking. That evening, I tried again. Kaya was sitting alone in the living room, staring out the window. Nicole and Marcus were outside on the deck, talking in low voices. I sat down beside her. "Kaya," I said softly, "are you okay?" She didn't look at me, but her hands were trembling. "I'm fine," she whispered. "You don't look fine." Her eyes filled with tears. She opened her mouth to speak, and then the sliding door opened. Nicole stepped inside, her smile sharp. "There you are, Kaya. I need your help in the kitchen." Kaya stood immediately, head down, and followed her mother without a word. I sat there alone, my jaw clenched, my hands gripping the armrest. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I lay in the dark, listening to the house settle, my mind racing. I was building a plan, slowly, carefully, but I needed more information. I needed to know exactly what they were planning and when. And then, just after midnight, I heard it. A soft knock on my door. I sat up, my heart leaping into my throat. Another knock, quiet, hesitant. I crossed the room and opened the door. Kaya stood there in the hallway, pale and shaking, tears streaming down her face. "Please," she whispered, "I need to tell you the truth." What secret is Kaya hiding? Subscribe and keep reading, because what she's about to say changes everything. I pulled Kaya inside and closed the door silently behind her. She stood there trembling, her arms wrapped around herself, tears spilling down her cheeks. She looked so small, so fragile, nothing like the confident little girl I remembered from 10 years ago. "Sit," I whispered, guiding her to the edge of my bed. She sat, her breath coming in short, shaky gasps. I grabbed a tissue from the nightstand and handed it to her. She clutched it but didn't use it. "Take your time," I said gently, "but tell me everything." She nodded, wiping her face with the back of her hand. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. "They're going to hurt you." I kept my face calm even though my heart was racing. "I know." Her eyes widened. "You know?" "I've heard things," I said, "but I need you to tell me what you know, all of it." She took a shuddering breath and nodded. "They're broke, completely broke. My dad lost his job 2 years ago. He got into some kind of investment scheme, crypto, I think, and lost everything. Then Mom started gambling, online poker. She kept saying she could win it back, but she just kept losing." My stomach twisted. "They borrowed money," Kaya continued, her voice cracking. "A lot of it, from bad people, people who don't just let you forget about it." "How much?" I asked. "Over $1 million. I felt the air leave my lungs. "They can't pay it back," Kaya said, tears streaming faster now. "The people they owe, they've been threatening us, calling, showing up at the house. They said if my parents don't pay, they'll take me instead." Horror washed over me. "Take you?" She nodded, sobbing now. "As collateral, to work off the debt, or I don't know, they didn't say exactly, but Mom and Dad are terrified. That's why we're here. They think you have money. They think if they can get control of it, they can pay off the debt and we'll be safe. So they're planning to steal from me," I said quietly. "Yes," her voice broke. "They're going to drug you, make you seem confused, get you declared incompetent. There's a doctor, someone Dad knows, who's going to sign papers saying you're not capable of making decisions. Then they'll get guardianship and take everything." The pieces fell into place. Everything I'd overheard, everything I'd suspected. "The tea," I said. Kaya nodded quickly. "Mom's been putting something in it. Sedatives, I think, to make you drowsy, to make you seem out of it. Please, Grandma, don't drink anything they give you. Don't eat anything they make without watching them the whole time." I reached out and took her hand. It was ice cold. "I won't," I promised, "and neither will you." She looked at me, her eyes red and desperate. I didn't want to come here. I tried to tell them it was wrong, but they said if I didn't help, if I told anyone, they'd leave me with the people we owe. They said I'm part of the deal. She was being used, threatened, held hostage by her own parents. I squeezed her hand tighter. Listen to me, Kaya. You are not leverage. You are not a bargaining chip. You are my granddaughter, and I am not going to let anything happen to you. Do you understand me? She nodded, tears falling silently. I'm going to fix this, I said, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Yes, she whispered. Good. Now go back to your room before they notice you're gone. Act normal. Don't let them know we talked. Can you do that? She nodded again, standing on shaky legs. She paused at the door and looked back at me. I'm sorry, she said, her voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I have nothing to be sorry for, I said firmly. Now go. She slipped out into the hallway, silent as a shadow. I sat on the edge of my bed, my mind racing. They weren't just planning to rob me, they were planning to destroy me, to take my freedom, my dignity, my home, everything I'd worked for, and they were willing to sacrifice their own daughter to do it. But they'd made one critical mistake. They underestimated me. I waited until the house was completely silent. Then I pulled out my phone. First, I called my lawyer, Ed Thornton. We'd worked together for years. He answered on the third ring, groggy but alert when he heard my voice. Ayanna, it's 2 a.m. What's wrong? I need your help, I said quietly, and I need you to keep this between us. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was a long pause. Jesus, he said finally. Okay, don't sign anything. Don't drink or eat anything you haven't prepared yourself. I'll start pulling documents together. Power of attorney protections, guardianship blocks, everything. We'll lock your assets down tight so they won't be able to touch a dime. Good, I said, but there's more. I need to know who they owe money to, and I need to know if that debt can be purchased. Another pause. You want to buy their debt? Yes. That's bold. Can you find out? I'll make some calls. Give me 24 hours. Next, I called my accountant, Linda Chen. She was less groggy. She worked late most nights. I gave her the same rundown. I'll freeze your accounts, she said immediately. Set up alerts. If anyone tries to access anything, we'll know instantly. Thank you. Ayanna, she said carefully, are you safe right now? For now, I said, but I won't be if I don't move fast. Finally, I called my former business partner, James Blackwood. We'd stayed friendly after the sale. He had connections I didn't, people who knew people. I need information, I told him, quietly, about a debt and about the people holding it. Say no more, he said. I'll dig. By the time I hung up, the sky was starting to lighten. I lay back down, exhausted but wired. They thought they had me cornered, isolated, helpless, but I wasn't alone anymore, and I wasn't helpless. 2 days later, Ed called me back. I found them, he said, the people holding the debt. It's a private lending group, not exactly legal, but not quite illegal either, gray area. Can I buy it? Yes, but it'll cost you. They're asking $900,000. Do it, I said without hesitation. There was a pause. Ayanna, are you sure? I'm sure. It'll take a few days to finalize, but once it's done, you'll own their debt. You'll own them. I smiled for the first time in days. Good. On the 5th day, I heard them laughing. I was in my room, door cracked open just enough to hear voices drifting from the kitchen. Nicole's voice was bright, almost giddy. Marcus was chuckling, a sound I hadn't heard in years. I moved silently down the hallway and stopped just out of sight. Did you see her this morning? Nicole was saying. She asked me 3 times what day it was. 3 times, Marcus. She's completely out of it. Marcus laughed. I know. Yesterday, she couldn't even remember where she put her keys. They were in her hand. The sedatives are working perfectly, Nicole said. I could hear the smile in her voice. Another few days and she'll be so confused she won't even know what she's signing." "You really think Dr. Reynolds will go through with it?" Marcus asked. "He already said yes. He owes me a favor. All he has to do is examine her, document the confusion and memory loss, and sign off on the guardianship paperwork. It's not even illegal. She clearly needs help managing her affairs." Marcus snorted. "Right, help. By this time next month, we'll own everything. The house, the accounts, all of it. We'll pay off the debt, sell this place, and finally get our lives back." "And Mom?" There was a pause. When Nicole spoke again, her voice was colder. "Your mother will be in a very nice memory care facility, somewhere quiet, somewhere she can't cause problems." My hands curled into fists. "You make it sound so easy," Marcus said. "It is easy. She's old, she's alone, no one's going to question it. And honestly, Marcus, she's been a burden for years. This is probably better for everyone." "Yeah," Marcus said quietly. "Yeah, you're right." I stood there frozen, listening to my son agree to my destruction. No hesitation, no guilt, just casual acceptance. Something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet final break, like a thread pulled too tight. I walked back to my room, closed the door, and sat on the edge of my bed. I felt nothing. No sadness, no anger, just cold, crystalline clarity. They weren't family anymore. They were predators, and I was done being prey. I picked up my phone and called Ed. "How close are we?" I asked. 48 hours, he said. "The paperwork's almost finalized. But Ayanna, there's something you need to know." "What?" He dug deeper into the debt, he said carefully. "The lenders, they're not just threatening your son and his wife. They've specifically mentioned Kaya. If the debt isn't paid in full by the end of the month, they're taking her." My blood ran cold. "What does that mean?" "It means exactly what you think it means," Ed said grimly. "They're going to sell her. Labor trafficking, most likely. Maybe worse. These people don't mess around." I closed my eyes. "And Marcus knows this?" "Based on what you've told me, yes, he knows. My son was willing to sacrifice his own daughter to save himself." "Finalize the purchase," I said, my voice flat, immediately. "Ayanna," "Do it, Ed. I don't care what it costs. I want that debt in my name by tomorrow." There was a pause, then quietly, "Okay, I'll make it happen. And Ed, I want it done through a shell entity. They can't know it's me. Not yet." "Understood." I hung up. For a long time, I sat there in silence, staring at the wall. 10 years ago, I would have done anything to have my son back. I would have forgiven him. I would have welcomed him home. But that woman was gone. The woman sitting here now had no illusions left, no hope for reconciliation, no maternal instinct pulling her toward forgiveness. I wasn't doing this for Marcus. I was doing this for Kaya and for every other person who'd been underestimated, dismissed, or erased by people who thought they were untouchable. The next day, Ed called. "It's done," he said. "You now own their debt. All of it, $900,000 plus interest. The lenders transferred the contract this morning." "Do they know?" "Not yet, but they will soon. The lenders are required to notify them of the transfer within 72 hours. "Good." "Ayanna," Ed said carefully, "what are you planning to do?" "Whatever I have to," I said. I hung up and stared at my phone. I owned them now. Every dollar they owed, every threat hanging over their heads, it all belonged to me. They thought they were taking my power. They had no idea I'd just taken theirs. That evening, Nicole cornered me in the living room. She was holding her phone, smiling that sharp, predatory smile. "Ayanna, I have some good news, she said brightly. I've scheduled a doctor's appointment for you tomorrow, just a routine checkup. Dr. Reynolds is a friend of ours. He's very good. He specializes in geriatric care. I looked at her, my face blank and docile. A doctor? I said slowly. Yes, honey, just to make sure you're feeling okay. You've been so forgetful lately. We're worried about you. Marcus stood behind her, arms crossed, watching me carefully. I blinked, touched my temple like I was confused. I suppose that's fine. Nicole's smile widened. Perfect. We'll leave at 9. Don't worry. We'll take care of everything. Okay, I said softly. She squeezed my shoulder, her nails pressing just a little too hard. You're going to be just fine, Ayanna. We're going to make sure of it. I watched her walk away, my expression empty. But inside, I was smiling, because tomorrow, everything was going to change. The morning of the doctor's appointment, I got up early and made myself breakfast. Toast, eggs, coffee I brewed myself. Nicole appeared in the doorway, already dressed, makeup perfect. You're up early, she said, eyeing my plate. I was going to make you something. I'm fine, I said. I can still feed myself. She smiled tightly. Of course. Well, we should leave in about 30 minutes. Dr. Reynolds is expecting us at 9. I'll be ready. Marcus came down a few minutes later. He looked nervous. He kept checking his phone, clearing his throat, avoiding eye contact. Kaya wasn't at breakfast. I didn't ask where she was. At 8:45, Nicole grabbed her purse. All right, Ayanna, let's get going. I stood slowly, playing the part. Do I need to bring anything? No, honey, we have everything handled. We walked to the car. Marcus drove. Nicole sat in the passenger seat. I sat in the back, hands folded in my lap, staring out the window. Halfway to the clinic, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. A text from Ed. It's done. They've been notified. Good luck. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. When we arrived at the clinic, Dr. Reynolds was waiting. He was a thin man in his 50s, with graying hair and a too friendly smile. He shook Nicole's hand first, then Marcus's, and finally extended his hand to me. Mrs. Whitehorse, he said warmly, it's a pleasure to meet you. Please come in. We followed him into a small examination room. He gestured for me to sit. Nicole and Marcus stood on either side of me like sentries. So, Dr. Reynolds said, opening a file, your family tells me you've been experiencing some confusion lately, memory lapses, difficulty with daily tasks. I looked at him and said nothing. He smiled gently. That's perfectly normal at your age, nothing to be ashamed of. I'm just going to ask you a few questions, okay? He started with the basics. What's your name? What's today's date? Who's the president? I answered every question correctly. He frowned slightly, glancing at Nicole. She gave him a sharp look. Well, he said, shifting gears, let me ask you this. Do you ever feel disoriented, like you're not sure where you are or what you're supposed to be doing? No, I said calmly. Have you been forgetting things, losing items? No more than anyone else. His smile was starting to crack. Mrs. Whitehorse, your family is concerned. My family, I interrupted, has been drugging me. The room went silent. Dr. Reynolds blinked. I'm sorry, what? They've been putting sedatives in my food and drinks to make me appear confused, to make me seem incompetent, so they can take guardianship and steal my money. Nicole's face went white. That's absurd. Ayanna, I'm perfectly coherent, I said, turning to her, and I have proof. Marcus stood frozen, his mouth open. Dr. Reynolds looked between us, his face pale. I think you need to document that I'm of sound mind, I said firmly, because if you sign any paperwork suggesting otherwise, you'll be complicit in fraud, and I will make sure your medical license is revoked. His hands trembled slightly. He looked at Nicole. She said nothing. I'm not signing anything, he said quietly. He stood abruptly. This appointment is over." He walked out. Nicole turned on me, her face twisted with rage. "You—" "Don't," I said, standing. My voice was calm, cold. "We're leaving, now." We drove back in complete silence. The second we walked through the door, Marcus's phone rang. He looked at the screen. His face went gray. He answered, stepping into the hallway. I heard his voice rise. "What? What do you mean transferred? Transferred to who?" Nicole's phone buzzed a second later. She looked at it, frowned, and opened a message. I watched her face drain of color. No, this can't be." She looked up at me, her eyes wide. "The debt! Someone bought our debt!" "I know," I said. Marcus came back into the room, his phone still pressed to his ear. "Who in the hell is Redwood Financial Holdings? Who are these people?" Nicole's hands were shaking. "They're calling it in. They're demanding payment in full, immediately." Marcus's eyes darted to me, then back to his phone. "We don't have it. We don't have anything." He stopped mid-sentence. His face went slack. He looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the exact moment he understood. "No, Mom, no, you didn't." I didn't say anything. I just held his gaze. Nicole's voice was shrill now. "What? What is he talking about?" "It's her," Marcus whispered. "She bought the debt. She owns it." The room exploded. Nicole lunged toward me, her face twisted with fury. "You bitch! You can't do this! You can't—" "I already did," I said quietly. Marcus sank into a chair, his head in his hands. "We're finished! We're completely finished!" "You tried to drug me," I said, my voice steady and cold. "You tried to declare me incompetent. You tried to steal everything I've worked for, and you were willing to let your own daughter be sold to pay off your mistakes." Nicole froze. "Yes," I said, "I know about that too." Marcus looked up, his face pale. "Mom, please." "The debt is due immediately," I continued. "You can't pay it, which means now I control what happens next." "What do you want?" "I want you out of my house. Today, right now. You take your suitcases and you leave. Kaya stays with me." "You can't take our daughter." "I'm not taking her. I'm protecting her from you." There was a knock at the door. I walked over and opened it. 2 police officers stood on the porch. Behind them was Ed, my lawyer, holding a folder. "Mrs. Whitehorse, we received a report of attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult." I stepped aside. "Come in." Nicole backed away, her eyes darting toward the hallway. "This is insane. You can't prove anything." "Actually," Ed said, stepping forward, "Mrs. Whitehorse has documentation, recordings, testimony from her granddaughter, and a toxicology report showing sedatives in her system that she never consented to." Marcus's face crumbled. "Mom, please." "You had 10 years to apologize, 10 years to reach out, to be my son. You chose this." The officers escorted them into the living room. Ed handed them paperwork, evidence, statements, everything I'd collected. Nicole tried to argue, tried to cry, tried to lie. It didn't matter. Within an hour, it was over. No charges were filed yet, but the threat hung in the air. The officers made it clear that if I chose to press charges, there was more than enough evidence. I didn't need to. I just needed them gone. By evening, Marcus and Nicole were packing. I stood in the doorway and watched them as they loaded suitcases into their car, the same suitcases they dragged in 5 days ago like they owned the place. Marcus looked at me once. His eyes were red. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, then he closed it and got in the car. Nicole didn't look at me at all. They drove away. And I stood there, watching the taillights disappear down the long driveway, feeling nothing but relief. Kaya appeared beside me, her small hand slipping into mine. "Is it over?" "Yes," I said. "It's over." They came to take everything. They left with nothing. If this story hit home, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. One more chapter left. Don't miss the ending. 3 days after they left, Marcus called. I was sitting on the dock with Kaya, watching the sun set over the water. My phone buzzed. I looked at the screen and saw his name. I let it ring twice before I answered. "Mom," he said. His voice was raw, broken. "Mom, please, I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. It was Nicole. She pushed me. She convinced me. I'm sorry. Please, can we talk? Can I come back?" I watched the light shimmer across the lake. Kaya sat beside me, quiet, her hand resting on my arm. "No," I said simply. "Mom, please, I'm your son. I know I messed up, but—" "You didn't mess up, Marcus," I said, my voice steady. "You made a choice. You chose to cut me out of your life for 10 years. You chose not to come to your father's funeral. You chose to drug me, manipulate me, and try to steal everything I'd worked for. And you chose to use your own daughter as leverage." "I was desperate." "So was I said, when your father died, when you stopped answering my calls, when I spent every holiday alone wondering what I'd done to deserve being erased. But I didn't become cruel. I didn't hurt people." There was silence on the other end. "I'm not going to be cruel to you now," I continued, "but I'm also not going to let you back in. You're not welcome here, Marcus. Not now. Maybe not ever." "Mom!" "Kaya is staying with me," I said. "She's safe, she's cared for, and she's finally somewhere she doesn't have to be afraid. That's all you need to know." "You can't just take my daughter." "I didn't take her. You lost her. There's a difference." I hung up. He called back twice. I didn't answer. The next day, I had the locks changed. New deadbolts, new keys, a security system installed with cameras facing the driveway and the front door. Not because I was afraid, because I was done leaving doors open for people who only came back when they wanted something. Kaya stood in the hallway, watching the locksmith work. "Do you think they'll come back?" she asked quietly. "Maybe," I said, "but they won't get in." She nodded, a small smile pulling at the corner of her mouth. Over the next few weeks, the house became ours. Kaya started eating again. The color returned to her face. She started talking more, laughing more, asking questions about everything, about the lake, about my business, about the beadwork and carvings I'd been teaching her. We fell into a rhythm. Breakfast together, walks by the water, evenings spent with tea and books and comfortable silence. It wasn't the family I'd imagined 10 years ago. It was better. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the stars come out, Kaya turned to me. "Grandma, why didn't you just let them take everything? Why did you fight back?" I thought about it for a long time before I answered. "Because," I said finally, "I spent too many years believing I was the problem, believing I was too much, too difficult, too dramatic. I let other people define my worth, and when they decided I wasn't worth their time, I almost believed them." I looked at her. "But I built something, Kaya, from nothing. I worked until my hands bled. I survived loss and loneliness and rejection, and I did it without bitterness, without cruelty. I earned every dollar, every inch of this place, and I wasn't about to let anyone take it from me just because they thought I was too old or too weak to fight back." She nodded slowly. "And," I added, "I wasn't going to let them use you. You deserved better. You deserved to be loved, not leveraged." Her eyes filled with tears. She leaned against me and I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't have to thank me. This is what family does, real family." We sat there in the quiet, the lake stretching out before us, dark and endless and calm. I thought about my ancestors, the women who'd survived worse than I had, who'd been displaced, erased, silenced, and who'd kept going anyway, who taught their daughters to be strong, not bitter, to protect what mattered, to never apologize for taking up space. I thought about my mother, who used to tell me, "You are not what they say you are. You are what you do when no one's watching." I had done something. I had stood my ground. I had protected my granddaughter. I had refused to be a victim, and I had done it without losing myself. I looked out at the water, at the home I'd built, at the life I'd earned. Marcus was wrong. Nicole was wrong. I didn't need them to be whole. I never had. For 10 years, I'd mourned the loss of my family. I'd wondered what I'd done wrong, what I could have done differently. But I hadn't lost my family. I'd lost people who never truly valued me in the first place. And in the process, I'd found something far more important. I'd found myself. Kaya squeezed my hand. "I'm glad I'm here, Grandma." "So am I." The night settled around us, warm and still, and for the first time in 10 years, I felt completely at peace. They thought I was nothing without them. They thought I was just a lonely old woman desperate for connection, easy to manipulate. They had no idea who I really was. They had no idea what I was capable of. But they do now, and I'll never let anyone make me feel small again. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or counted out, leave a comment below and let me know. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe, because everyone deserves a reminder that they're stronger than anyone gives them credit for. Thank you for reading Ayana's story. Remember, you are not what they say you are. You are what you do when it matters most.